We're thrilled that you're here this evening, and we're going to get started. So this program is being brought to you by the University of Rhode Island Master Gardeners, and we are part of the University of Rhode Island College of the Environment and Life Sciences. So cooperative extension is found at every land-grant college in the United States. Usually that might be the state university. And we are based on bringing science-based university resources to Rhode Island's people and communities since 1914. If you're interested in learning more about what we do, you can go and search for the University of Rhode Island's Cooperative Extension webpage. We have 5 focus groups: land stewardship, food systems and agriculture, water resources, energy efficiency, and healthy lifestyles. Since there are so many people, there are currently 169, and we may have more, we're going to ask you to stay muted and to enter your comments in the chat. We will answer all your questions at the end. Thank you so much. So I'm pleased to introduce Mary Menniti. She grew up in Pittsburgh, and she had an Italian grandfather who really taught her all about gardening and inspired her to become interested in preserving Italian garden heritage. So, and she recently has become a new nonna, and she's excited to teach her own grandchild how about these traditions. So we thank you for being with us tonight from Pittsburgh. And Mary, if you would please begin your talk.
Thank you. Thank you. I will. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you also, Vanessa, who helped coordinate my talk here tonight. Also, thank all of you out there joining virtually for the talk. I'm excited. I'm always happy to share what the Italian Garden Project is all about. On this cold and freezing mid-January day, I'm sure it's as cold in Rhode Island as it is here in Pittsburgh. I'm hoping to be able to transport us all, at least temporarily, to a time and place much greener and warmer than we're all experiencing now through the slideshow. So I hope you enjoy it. I know Rhode Island isn't always as frozen as it is right now. I was there in September for my first visit with the Italian Garden Project. I had visited, outside of the project, but this was my first visit early September, and I really had a lovely time visiting your beautiful state. I had such a warm welcome from my hosts there, the Iani family in Warwick, who we'll see a bit later in the slideshow, and also Christy Otterbach of Wells Farm Arts and Education Center in West Kingston. She organized a gathering of fig growers while I was there, and I got to meet a lot of Rhode Island fig fanatics, folks who are just as fanatic about fig growing as I am. And I really enjoyed my time in Rhode Island, and so much so that I'm going to be visiting again in the spring, seeking out more classic Italian American vegetable gardens. So tonight I want to talk about what I've been doing for the last 10 or more years, documenting these Italian American vegetable gardens and founding the Italian Garden Project. Our mission is to celebrate the joy and wisdom inherent in the traditional Italian American vegetable garden, preserving this heritage and demonstrating its relevance for reconnecting to our food, our families, and the earth. And it's really about shining a light on people whose whole lifestyle is about food, family, and the earth. These are people like Erminia Iani that I visited in Warwick, and folks all over Rhode Island and all over the country, really, who grew up in a lifestyle of agriculture, on surviving on what they could grow, and brought those traditions here. And now they live much more lightly on the earth and much closer to the earth than most of us do today. They're really living a lifestyle that we many of us are trying to get back to. But I never like to start a talk about the Italian Garden Project without first giving credit to this gentleman. This is my grandfather, Antonio. And he really, at least to me, was the Italian-American gardener extraordinaire. He really lived for his garden. He always had a very large garden. I was lucky enough to be present my whole life to that joy that the garden brought him. And that had a huge influence on what I'm doing today with the project. Now, my other grandfather, Antonio, my maternal grandfather, he also had a very large garden, he and his wife, Lucia, but unfortunately, he passed away before I was born, so I only got to hear about his legendary garden. So all of my grandparents were Italian Americans, but all three of them were born in Italy, and one was born soon after her immigrant parents immigrated. So I was really immersed in Italian American culture. This was a few years before I was born. This is my large extended family where we celebrated Italian American traditions. For any of you out there who grew up Italian American, this is Christmas Eve, the Feast of the Seven Fishes in my grandmother's basement kitchen. So so my whole extended family, my immediate family, and my whole community, really, in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, where I grew up, we had a large Italian American community there. So I was very close. I was totally immersed in Italian culture growing up, very close to my grandparents. This is my grandfather Antonio and my grandmother Mary with us on Christmas morning. I mean, they were just an everyday part of our lives. And I was lucky because he lived a few miles away, but came every day to our house after his retirement to tend to his very large garden. He lived more toward the city, had a small garden there, but came to our house every day and tended to his very large garden and his several sheep he had after retirement, and his chickens. And here in this picture, he's cleaning up a little lamb for my brother Anthony to be taking to kindergarten that day for show and tell, and we all got to do that. So I have incredibly fond memories of my grandfather. This is him. This is me on another holiday, Halloween, and I was dressed as a chicken. My maternal grandmother from Italy was a seamstress, so trained by the nuns in her small village. So she made all of her grandchildren these amazing Halloween costumes that I don't think I'm going to live up to that as a new nonna, but I'll do my best. But so my grandfather is pretending here to chase me to chop off my head with an axe, as he would do to the chickens that ran around our yard. But I knew enough to run, but I knew enough that he was joking, because I think I'm laughing there. So, you know, he had a huge influence. He was with us day in and day out, but his lifestyle was very, very different than what he was seeing our lifestyle as young people growing up. His would have been completely different than a young American growing up, you know, opening lots of presents on Christmas morning, having all the things that kids growing up in the 60s and 70s had, all the toys and everything we could possibly want, and then going on to get educations that he could never dream of having. You know, he had a third grade education And he saw us to go on to higher education, to university. So he was very proud that his sacrifices could provide all of this for us. But I think, though, he was a bit worried about us as well, because he saw us learning all these things, but he also saw us not knowing some of the very basics of life that he knew, that he would have known at our age, of how to grow your own food, something as basic as survival. You can't survive without food. And he knew that. He knew that from the lifestyle that he grew up in, and that he knew that he was proud of us, and we were getting a good education, but he did worry. And he used to say, if there was a war, you people are going to starve, which is actually true. And because he knew it, he knew what hard times were, and he knew things like food security. So that message stayed with me through much of my life, and now is influencing the Italian Garden Project and the message I'm trying to share. Now, he came as a 16-year-old in 1912. And he left a poor village in the mountains of Caserta, outside of Naples, a small village called Sant'Angelo d'Alife. He was the oldest of his brothers and sisters, and left to not only make a better life for himself, but also to send money back to Italy, that as he did for all of his life until he passed away in his 90s. But he wouldn't have come dressed like this. This was a suit that he was able to buy after he got here and earn those few dollars, and then a photograph he was able to pay for. He could have never afforded this in his passage over here. He came, but this was a photograph that he was proud to take and send back to his mother to show that how well he was doing, and make her proud of him. He would have come from a family like this. This isn't his family, but a family very much like this, where he was working side by side with his mother and father and brothers and sisters, and even aunts and uncles, day in and day out, to produce everything, absolutely everything that they needed to survive. There were very few stores, if any, that he had access to. And if they couldn't grow it, they didn't have it to eat. Or he would tend his garden with his family. He had some sheep. He was a shepherd at a very young age. So it was a completely different lifestyle than he saw us growing up as. And this is just another family, one of the folks in the project who have documented their family. But that lifestyle of just literally surviving with your own hands. And it was a hard lifestyle. It was not easy. If anyone ever tried to live at all that self-sufficiently, it's very, very difficult. And Italy was it was struggling at that time. It was economic hardship, especially after the unification in the 1860s, when the North and South unified and all of Italy became one. And Southern Italy fared really badly after unification. And that beginning in the 1880s, that's when the huge waves of immigrants began to leave because of the hardships the economic hardships that people were facing, especially in Southern Italy. But so they left to make a better life for themselves. But I always say, when they left when they left because of the bad things, they left a lot of good behind. And they left the beauty of Italy. They left a lifestyle connected to nature. They left, if you've ever been to Italy, or especially Southern Italy, the beauty of the landscape is unbelievable. And these folks, spent their days, day in and day out, connected to nature, learning, the way of growing things and eating with the seasons and living with the cycles of nature. everywhere in Italy is just absolutely beautiful. And they often left that to go to places like this, to places like Pittsburgh and the steel mills of Pittsburgh and Baltimore and Cleveland and the textile mills of New England. So going from living a lifestyle outside of in nature to a lifestyle in smoky, dark mills was a huge difference for all of them. And so when they finally earned enough money to buy that little house, or a little row house even, and it had a piece of land, they were so eager to put their hands in the dirt again and do what was so familiar to them, that they had the garden again, something that they understood. They were struggling with English everywhere, trying to, in a country totally different than their own, but they knew the language of plants. They understood plants. They could eat from the garden and eat the cuisine that was familiar to them. So the garden became almost like their refuge, that they could, just be so comfortable and so familiar with their gardens. And in these row houses, at one time there were gardens everywhere. And even if you had a little row house in a little backyard like this, every inch was planted with garden. To them, it didn't make sense to plant grass. Why would anybody plant grass? You can't eat grass, and you have to survive. So the garden really meant so much to them. And I love this picture because it reminds me that when I was in the backyard with this gentleman, he looked up the row behind those houses and pointed and said, at one time, every one of these houses had gardens. And, it wasn't just the Italians, but, we had Greek neighbors and they had a garden. We had Polish neighbors and they had a garden. So this isn't just about Italians and gardens. Gardens were a way of life not that long ago. And it's really important to demonstrate that, and how actually doable that is, in the whole urban gardening movement. It's not new. It's not a new thing. Urban gardens are a very, very old thing. And so, but my grandfather, that generation passed away, but I was lucky enough to move then in my adult, when I had my own family as an adult, to a community that had a lot of Italian Americans. These were Italian Americans that were post-World War II Italians. So in the community I moved, they, my grandfather was the first wave of immigrants, but post-World War II, there was a second wave of immigration from Italy because of the devastation that Italy incurred during the war. So I got to spend time and get to know these folks. I love being with them. My friend Thomasina, where her house is, there's something garden going on every day, food and garden. She'll be braiding garlic, and she'll be tending to her many plants, her bay tree, her fig trees, and her giant garden in the backyard. And this is in a small suburban plot, but it's all garden. It's just in the classic Italian style, with rows and rows of whole beans. And you walk onto her porch, and it's always what she harvested that day and what she'll cook that evening for her family. And, on her kitchen counter are freshly picked zucchini blossoms that she'll stuff and fry that evening. And her basement is like a typical Italian cantina. The basements in Italy that are just stocked with sauces and jarred olives and peppers. And then I took this picture, but behind me would have been the sausages that they had made in January, hanging from the ceiling, the wine they had made in September. So these folks, were living this incredible lifestyle that I remembered exactly from growing up as a child. And I just felt like people weren't paying enough attention to how amazing these folks were, and they, are elders. They were getting older, and they weren't going to be around forever. And wasn't paying enough attention when my grandfather was doing, and my grandparents were doing all these things. So I really felt like I have a chance now to capture this incredible knowledge, this ancient knowledge that these folks have. And another woman from the same town as my friend Thomasina, but right in the same neighborhood, Marietta, and her husband Giovanni, who have these incredible gardens. And you can see behind him in his garden, he grows more in November in Pennsylvania than most people can grow in the summer. This is their summer garden. And so this is a garden that was so classic that when a local garden club approached me, who knew I was doing this project and were doing historical documentations, asked me to partner with them to document this garden because it had all the classic elements, the rain barrels, the chickens, the grape arbors, and the classic garden statuary. So we documented this garden, and it's the first time in an Italian-American garden. It has been submitted and admitted to the Archive of American Gardens, a digital archive in the Archive of American Gardens in the Smithsonian. So we're very proud that now these kinds of gardens are represented there. So it wasn't only in my neighborhood. I started expanding out into Pittsburgh and met Bruno Garofalo from Campobasso, who you'll see later, his fig trees. And then outside of Pittsburgh to Maria DiFranco in Cleveland, from Campobasso as well, but doing all the same things that that my friends in Pittsburgh were doing. And Nick Ranieri in Long Island, who had an incredible garden. He now moved. His garden no longer is there, but now gardens in a community garden in another part of Long Island. And lovely Maria del Arciprete in the Bronx. Joe DeLuca in Boston, visiting Tony Amato in San Jose, California, and the lovely Cosentinos in Oakland, California, who are from Calabria. But, and then lovely Erminia Iani from Warwick, Rhode Island. I visited her in September, and it had this most wonderful visit. And as is often happens, she prepared an incredible meal for me with all the her traditional foods, most of it having come straight in from her amazing garden. And we'll see her fig trees later. She presented a bowl of these beautiful white figs from her trees. I was there early September, which was a great time to visit. But all of these folks have, were so much like my grandfather, and remembering that lifestyle and seeing that joy. I see that joy every time I visit these gardens, how much joy the garden brings them and how alive they feel in their gardens. And the physical activity these folks are getting. My grandfather, that was him in his late 80s after he had had a stroke and he had weakness on his left side. But he would be out there in the garden with that wooden chair he's holding, just hoeing and planting and doing all that he could. And what better physical therapy is that for someone of any health condition, let alone his. And not only that physical activity, but also giving purpose and meaning into his later years. Still growing food for his family, still saving seeds from generations that he was planting, and then passing those on to us, and his tending to his fig tree and sharing those figs. So the garden giving purpose, meaning, a sense of well-being, and I see that everywhere I go. And the lifestyles that I see are also similar because they've come from so similar a lifestyle. From Italy, completely self-sufficient agricultural families, and in from hill towns like this. I have a quote from someone said about a town like this, from which many of these folks came from. It breathes of medieval life and hardship and simple, frugal beauty in a place where the Middle Ages ended only after the Second World War. So because of, the folks I visit now had lived through World War II as children, and saw how difficult life can be. It influenced who they are and how they maintain and why they maintain these gardens. Like my grandfather, they understand food security, and they can't imagine being so naive as to believe that there will always be huge grocery stores stocked with food. They know otherwise, and we all sort of live a bit naively believing and not realizing that. So this is Marietta, who we documented for the Smithsonian, her garden, teaching me. And she was really one that really drove home the idea of how self-sufficient a lifestyle they lived. She would tell me about how she and her mother and sisters used to grow the flax that they would then cut and soak and pound the fibers and then weave into thread, and then bring to the woman in the village, who would then weave those into their sheets and pillowcases and all the things then that they would use to live, and also the things that they would then save and embroider for their hope chests. But that's how self-sufficient their lifestyle was, that they had to grow their own fibers. They couldn't go and buy them. So talking to these folks are really like talking to living history. I mean, when do we have a chance to talk to people that have lived literally like the Middle Ages, and not in an insulting way, but in an amazing, really something that they should be proud of, that they understood how to survive to that degree. So these gardens that I visit are all about sustainability, although they would never think of it as sustainability. It's just what you do. You don't run out and buy something at Home Depot for your garden. You use old rebar, or you use little pieces of scraps of lumber. You don't buy everything you need for your garden. You use what you have. So they're really lessons in reusing and repurposing, recycling. And, why go out and buy string to tie your tomato plants when you can unravel a carpet and roll it into a ball and tie your tomato stakes up with it? So, when you're in those gardens, you really feel like a consumer when you see how inventive and ingenious they are, reusing and repurposing things. This is Antonino Macchi. He was a Sicilian fisherman, and he grew the beloved cucuzza squash, the cucuzza squash that so many Sicilians are so proud of when I visit their gardens. Other parts of Italy grow it too, but it's really a Sicilian vegetable. And Antonino, he would create every year these trellises from wood that his son said was 40 years old, strong enough to grow his tomatoes and to support his sometimes 5-foot long cucuzza squash. And he did it all with string, with these pieces of wood, and using knots that he learned to tie from mending his fishing nets as a fisherman. So this is the kind of knowledge we're trying to capture before it's gone. And it's really about the family so much. As a new nonna myself, I really have such great role models to really show how to teach your grandchildren, how to have influence your grandchildren, because I was influenced by my grandfather, and I see these wonderful nonni throughout the country that are teaching their grandchildren about the garden, teaching them Italian words while they're tagging along behind them. So it's really about being how the garden is so central to the family. And in these gardens are these tools that were sometimes brought from Italy because they knew that they couldn't have them here, these special tools that they were so used to. And some were even forged in mills, in the steel mills, because they couldn't find them here. And these are really the heirlooms of our culture that I'm trying to save. This one was on a scrap pile, and thinking that the gentleman thought it, as he wasn't gardening much anymore, and I was so thrilled to be there in time to save it, and he was gladly gave it to me. But these really are, I consider, really precious heirlooms of our culture that really speak to who our ancestors were. And, the fruits and vegetables, I just like at the Yanni Erminia's house, I went home with fruits and vegetables after being fed a whole meal. It's just the generosity is also a typical hallmark of these gardens. And going home with these incredible varieties of vegetables from most of my visits. What we call gourmet now just have been coming out of these gardens for forever. These things that Roma pole beans and white white eggplant that were grown in just buckets in a backyard in the Bronx, and peppers of every shape and size. And of course, tomatoes of every shape and size. So all of these things that are considered gourmet and heirloom, they are heirloom, but now that's something popular. But this was what was always coming out of these gardens. Tomatoes, some that don't even look like tomatoes. And it's just a way of life that really, they're not getting back to anything. They're just living a way of life they always have. And seed saving, they're growing these unique vegetables because they're growing from not seeds that they bought commercially now. Sometimes they do that, but mostly they're growing from seed that's been passed down through their family for generations. Seeds that they brought, maybe an uncle brought, 70 years ago, and they're still growing. So these are the seeds through the project that I'm really, really focused on saving, because when I found that when these gardeners are no longer gardening, the family often doesn't know what to do with them, and they sit and rot in a basement or a shed. And it's really, talk about heirlooms of our culture and real cultural treasures. These seeds, sometimes that aren't even found in the villages from where they came any longer, are just really, really very, very important that we save them, not only for our cultural heritage, but for biodiversity and a lot of other reasons. And they're being grown not under fancy grow lights each season. They're just being grown in sunny bedroom windows, in nothing fancy at all. And thank goodness they're always willing to share them with me, especially if I show any interest. This is Mariano Floro, who unfortunately passed away last year, but not before giving me these lovely Sengara seeds that he described as sort of a cross between spinach and Swiss chard. Really some unique, very unique seeds. And I found an article about how in Liguria, they had to reintroduce seeds that they found in Stockton, California, that were originally from Liguria, but they were brought over and grown by immigrants here, and they found that they were no longer could be found in Liguria, so they had to reintroduce them from Stockton. and now they're back, rematriated back to Liguria. So these precious seeds that I've been saving on my own for a dozen years, and I'm so glad now to have professional partners in this effort. True Love Seeds in Philadelphia is now helping me grow them, as well as their growers across the country. Especially Growers Grange has taken a real interest in helping me preserve these heirlooms. It's a farm in Corbett, Oregon. And so we have growers now, and now these seeds can actually be available to help support my project and also to support the work of these great seed savers, such as True Love Seeds. So they're available. The first is our Pepe Insalata. This is a lettuce from Sabatino Denardo, who brought them from Abruzzo. We also have, that was our first introduction. We also have the bachicha bean. Now is part of the catalog. Is available through True Love Seeds catalog. And I found that from a grower in Richmond, California. And also, what's our third one? Oh, the Poverella bean that was brought from Calabria by Concetto Liberto, and she shared those with me. So we have those three seeds, and we will soon have many more being introduced through True Love Seeds. But fruits and vegetables are also, it wasn't just fruits and nuts it wasn't just the vegetables that were so important, but the yards were full of pear trees and peach trees and plum trees and the grape arbors. Why have a shade tree when you could grow a peach tree and then sit under the grape arbor if you needed shade? And of course, the Italian prune plum that I thought everyone on earth grew as a kid, because my family and all my cousins and friends, every Italian I knew grew Italian prune plums. And of course, the chestnut trees, the Asian chestnuts that they're growing here. And a lot of these trees, these fruit trees, when I visit, have been grafted and might be growing 3 varieties or 4 varieties of pears on one tree because they've grafted them onto the original tree. And of course, figs. Figs are such an important part of Italian American culture, and it's such a revered fruit to Italian Americans. And it really speaks to who these folks were, bringing a Mediterranean fruit to climates where Mediterranean fruit don't easily grow. All across the United States, you'll find fig trees growing, not only by Italian Americans, but other cultures too revere the fig. And figs are really speak to who many immigrants to this country were, that came from cultures that knew how to grow things so well that they could grow things where they normally couldn't in such as very cold climates in Western Pennsylvania and Rhode Island, the dark figs, the light figs. It's not done easily, and you have to love figs to be able to grow them in these climates. They need to be wrapped and protected, especially on days and nights like we're having now. I worry about my fig trees. The ones I have, many potted ones in my garage, and they're safe until it gets very, very cold like this, and then I worry about them. But they love their trees so much. These folks, that they work very hard. This is Bruno Garofalo, who I showed you earlier from Campobasso, and going to great lengths to protect this tree that he brought hidden in the lining of his coat in 1961 when he came over, and has been growing ever since, wrapped with insulation. So it's quite an effort. This is another one, a grower in Pittsburgh, who grows these 2 trees in the most unusual fashion, and actually pipes hot air in from his house when the thermostat goes below 32. This is the second layer over those two trees. He covers them really well and puts this third layer, so that tree's really well protected. But it just amazes me at the lengths people go to. But I too used to, when I had a different house in Pittsburgh and had this tree, used to bury the tree underground. Like I learned from my Italian friends, they would, and how my grandfather actually used to do it when I was very young. He did it differently, as we'll see in this another slide. But every year they unearth the root ball a bit, lower it down into the ground, put a piece of plywood over, and then cover that with grass and leaves and to insulate it a bit. And then in the spring, after the last frost, stand it upright and get figs from it. This is another method, building little sheds over it, made of every scrap of wood you can find, and nothing fancy. But anything to protect that fig tree. This is in a affluent Boston backyard, where the grandson of a fig grower, a nostalgic grandson, grows his fig in a much more orderly structure. And this is the Erminia's fig tree that in Warwick, one of the most amazing fig growing techniques I've ever seen. She grows her tree in a trench lying down. The tree never stands upright, but it's lying down in a trench so that she can use those boards, and she has help, of course, to cover that trench every year. Right now, it would be nice and tucked in, and the branches would be wrapped and covered with that wood to stay nice and warm during cold days like this. There you can see she actually has two incredibly huge trees that she grows like that. And she was kind enough while I was there to find a little runner, a little start of a tree, and pulled it out with roots and all, and sent me home with it. And I was so thrilled because we have our legacy fig tree collection where we're collecting and preserving these heirlooms of our culture that have come, made the journey over. This one made the journey from Calabria. Her mother-in-law was from Calabria and brought this tree. And so we want to preserve these heirlooms of our culture. And everywhere I go, if they're willing, and they usually are more than happy to dig out a fig start for me and pot it up and send me home with it. So the legacy fig tree collection, along with our legacy seed collection, is an important part of our project. I'm creating a book right now, a children's book, hopefully be done in a couple months, about my grandfather, love of his fig tree, and my tagging along and learning about growing gardens and his love, and being influenced by his love of his fig tree to start this project. So that's basically what the Italian Garden Project is about. There's lots of other aspects that I don't have time to share. You can learn more, though, on my website, theitaliangardenproject.com. You can write to me there if you want to get involved in the project. If you know some of a garden that you would like to have documented, that you feel that a classic Italian garden that needs to be preserved and documented before it's gone. But so that's what the Italian Garden Project is all about, and I love doing it, and I hope to continue to do it and pass on this knowledge to a future generation, not only of Italian Americans, but all young folks who need to know about the tradition of the garden for many immigrants. So thank you very much. Again, thanks for listening. And I guess we're going to have there's some questions come in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer any of those.
Yes, thank you, Mary. That was beautiful. So if everyone would put their information in the chat. So while you're all typing in your questions, I'll turn it over to Vanessa Venturini, who's the URI Master Gardener Coordinator, just to say a few words. Are you there, Vanessa?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Mary. I can't wait for that children's book. I'm definitely going to be ordering that for my daughter, who we have some Italian American, if you can tell by the last name. But I was surprised to see that you had some Warwick residents on there. That is so exciting for us here in Rhode Island. We love anything Rhode Island. And I just love this idea of it's like ancestral gardening techniques coming over here from the homeland, and the idea that you're saving heirloom varieties. I think my first question, first of all, thank you for sharing. That was such a treat, especially feeling so close to home in so many ways. My first question is, what's the plan with the heirloom, figs and the seeds? What's the idea here? Is it sort of like a seed vault situation, or how will they be used?
Right. Well, I have been saving them for years, and now with the help of professional growers, I have a hope of being able to continue to preserve them. And now, if they're available, through True Love Seeds, we can all help preserve them as well by buying them and supporting the project, and then growing out these heirlooms, because otherwise really it just breaks my heart when I find out that these seeds, I had my grandfather's cucuzza seeds, I wish I still had them. So many people tell me that, and it's a shame that we would lose these. I also have the fig tree collection. I'm creating a project where we're actually going I got a grant to have a collection of 10 to 11 fig trees that are collected from across the country that represent the many parts of Italy as possible. And we're going also to record the story with each of these figs. So like Erminia Iani will record the story, the immigration story, her story about growing these figs, and then plant them in a garden. So we'll have a physical living garden museum of fig trees, where you go to each tree, scan the QR code, and can watch the video history of that tree at each of the trees. So we hope to have an East Coast garden and then a West Coast garden, so that people can really understand the meaning of the fig tree to so many immigrants.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I love the ingenious structures. And I've heard all different ways of people, laying the fig down and covering it, but I had never seen someone piping the hot air from their home underneath. That was incredible.
Oh, it's amazing. It never ceases to amaze me how elaborate some of these methods are, that people have such nostalgia. I think that's what it is. They have such nostalgia for that grandparent or uncle or neighbor that grew that fig tree. And they'll go to great lengths, because you don't, Erminia got a lot. She got a lot of figs in her method, but most people don't get that many figs in cold climates. So it always amazes me how devoted people can be to these fig trees.
That's great. We have just a couple comments that you can catch up on for a second while other people are putting their comments. Jane from Oregon said you brought a tear to her eye. She has a similar experience, and she will be repeating your legacy with her grandkids. Karen from Rhode Island says that she's Italian, and you made her smile with your comments about the basement kitchen. She had one too. We have more folks from Rhode Island, someone from Princeton, Warwick, Sacramento, Exeter, Rhode Island. So one question was, how are you documenting techniques you have learned, you have shared about figs and other knowledge? Would they go to your website, or how would they find this knowledge you have?
So on my website, they can go. There's lots of blogs about fig growing, and there's also my video gallery. There, I have a YouTube channel with lots of videos about fig growing, and eventually we'll have all of the stories, the documented stories about the fig trees accessible also through the website.
So I guess a variant on that was, how are you promoting the actual techniques?
Promoting? Oh, you mean encouraging people to garden? And
I think that's what they meant.
Yeah. So I was for a while giving fig growing classes. I was. A lot of people are interested. They remember how their relative ancestor used to do this fig tree, but they don't know the specifics of it. So I haven't since before pandemic been giving the classes. But I'd be happy to come to Rhode Island and give a fig tree growing class. Maybe we could do. I would love to actually organize a little tour of some of these great Italian gardens up there in your neck of the woods, so you can actually see hands-on how some of these techniques are done.
But that would be lovely. Here's a lady from Boston who's thanking you for sharing your heritage. A gentleman, Derek from Richmond, who has an Italian comment, which I won't try to say, but I think he's saying thank you so much for your information. Again, they want to know, how are you going to share your information with the masses so we can learn from all of these folks? So that kind of goes, I'm sure that having, I think we had over 186 people with us this evening, and at least 100, I think, are master gardeners. I'm sure we'd like to join you on some warmer day, learning about these lovely fig gardens.
That would be great.
I have a question, Barbara. If you start a fig from seedling start, how long before fruit production?
So yeah, from a little start, like I got from, I would say between 3 and 5 years, it usually takes before you get an edible fig. You might get one that falls off for the third year or second year, but it's at least 3 to 5 years before you'll get figs.
Definitely think we'll have to add some eating into that tour as well. You're making me hungry.
Oh, I'd love fig jam. Here's someone from the Providence Italian American Club thanking us for inviting them. Another lady says her grandfather came from Caserta. He brought a peony seed, which he grew into beautiful blooms, later transferred to my yard, then my daughter's, and now in a third generation yard. That's so lovely.
Lovely. Wonderful.
I have a question. How can we refer a Italian family gardener to you, Mary? What's the best way to reach out?
Through the website, there's a comment or a section you'll see contact us, and please reach out through that, or mary@theitaliangardenproject.com is my email. So, but really the website is a great way, an easy way to contact me too.
Michael would like to know if there's documentation about canning techniques and if they are different from what can be found online. So do you think your grandmother had a special technique for those lovely jars?
Well, there are lots of different techniques, but what I love is, and I don't know if I should promote this, but I'll often get jars, canned sauce in a plastic pickle jar. They'll often use old jars, reuse, recycle, not, why go buy jars? And this happens all over Italy. They don't buy glass jars with lids, to can in. They reuse some beer bottle. My aunt used to have rows and rows of tomato sauce canned in old beer bottles, where they'll actually buy they actually sell the lids, and they'll reuse old beer bottles. So that's one technique. Yeah, that I don't know if I should actually promote that, because we're so into hygiene and everything to be sanitary, but that's what they do in Italy, and that's what my grandmother did as well.
Mary, someone would like you to type your website into the chat, please.
Sure.
And I think I sent it out. I hope I did.
Well, we'll come back to that slide at the end. And while she's doing that, Michael says, has a fig tree growing on Block Island. And Frank says, Mary could be talking about his grandparents from Sicily, carrying on the traditions on Cape Cod with my grandsons.
Lovely.
I don't know if you can answer this at the moment, but Franco Sorelli wants to know if there's a list of the varieties of figs you're growing, or if you could just mention a couple that you think might grow in cold climates.
Right. So that's always a tough one, because the figs that I grow primarily are ones that came over decades ago, and the naming is problematic, because nothing these weren't universal names, and they were whatever they called it in that village, that type of fig. So I never am able to share names of figs, although the things that are available commercially that I'm somewhat familiar with, but I don't grow. I've heard brown turkey figs, the classic Chicago hardy, but I think my grandfather's fig tree is one of the hardiest ever. And but I have no name for it. I have no variety for it. It's just it's probably maybe a brown turkey, but who knows? There's what 800 varieties of figs out there, so it's hard to tell. But I always say just grow the one, if you have one that means something to you, and just protect it really well, or just grow one that you like the flavor of.
Mary, to follow up, we met in September at Christy's house. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
I'm growing about 40 trees right now, but I have 5 that, like you do, are wrapped every year, and they're about 18 years old right now.
Wow. Could you recommend a name of one that you think is hardy in your area?
I've been growing my Chicago tree, which last year I was posting pictures on my Facebook page. I was getting baskets and baskets of figs from it. I do wrap it really well every year, but it's about 18 years old, and I cut it down from 10 feet to 5 feet. I do that every year, and every year it just explodes back up to 5 to 10 feet, whatever. And it's really good. I have Chicago that is hardy, and I have the brown turkey. And then this year I've introduced 3 new ones, but in my basement right now, it looks like a little fig laboratory, because I've got starters, and I've got about 40 to 60 figs growing down in my basement right now.
Well, maybe you and I better co-teach a fig growing class in Rhode Island. You're the one.
One lady would like to know if people can support and donate to the Italian Garden Project on your website.
Thank you for asking that. Yes, you absolutely can. I mean, this has been a labor of love, and I do have a nonprofit wing of it, and like many projects like mine, funding is always not one of our strong points. But so any support you could give would be appreciated, and it can be done through my website. There's a donate button, and you can donate right through the, goes straight, I think, a PayPal or there's an online way to do that. Or you can write to me through the website, and I'll send you my address. And if you feel more comfortable, and you can send me something. But thank you. Thanks for asking that.
We have a question about the True Love's seed company. They want to know if the Italian collection that's at True Love's is all from your work and your collection, or are they from a variety of places? And is the website trueloveseeds.com?
Yes, it is trueloveseeds.com. And it's Owen Taylor, who started that, has Italian heritage, and he's also been collecting some Italian varieties that he's listed on there before he and I met. So he has a Italian collection, although they don't have. They're not from Italian American gardeners as mine are. His are Italian varieties. And so you have to go to the specific seed to see if it's from the Italian Garden Project collection. We have 3 seeds on there right now, but we are going to make it so it's more clear, the Italian collection, what part of the Italian collection is from Italian American the Italian Garden Project. But
we have a technical question. One person would like to know, for seeds to be donated to your project, do you require any documentation about whether the seeds were prevented from being cross-pollinated before you accept them for the seed saving? So what are your criteria for accepting seeds?
Right. So our criteria is that they have to have been passed down in a family for several generations, at least, grown in this country for at least like 25 to 30 years. That's about what we say that they have to have been. And it's impossible. I mean, when we grow them out, we are very strict about, isolation and, trying to prevent cross-pollination. But when they were grown in these gardens, for generations, there's no way to, test for that or know about that. It just seems that after a while, these open pollinated seeds are very true to year after year, generation after generation, to the what they're looking for, what they know what they're looking for with the vegetables. So prior to that, we can't really control for that.
Someone was interested to know what kind of fertilizers and or food do they use to grow their amazing vegetables? From your grandfather's garden, how did he provide nutrients?
Right. Well, they often, in Italy especially, would have had their livestock or their chickens, and that's what they used to fertilize their gardens. And their compost. I ask often, these gardeners, do you compost? And they'll like, oh, no. I just dig a hole and I throw the vegetable scraps in there and cover it up. Well, that's composting. So they wouldn't call it composting, but they often, always do. We always threw the banana peel out on the garden, when we were at my grandparents. And so it's compost, composting all vegetable scraps. And then, my grandfather had his chickens, what's better than his chicken manure for his garden. So that's often what they used.
Derek says he frequently goes to Naples and he brings back seeds from pardon my pronunciation, the Pianola di Vesuvio tomatoes. And when I grow them in the garden, I end up with a mix where some are true and others seem to be adopting characteristics. So he's wondering how much of a problem cross-pollination of tomatoes is. I think there are heirloom varieties where they've been segregated, but I think if they're out in the garden and the bees are flying around, you could have a mix.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. It definitely happens, and then they try to save, if you're saving the seeds, try to save the ones that, are most true to, the original. Or sometimes the new one is also desirable too, and then people start growing those. But yeah, it does happen. But they're saving seeds each year, and they are selecting the seeds that they want, the ones probably that are most true to the originals.
Well, thank you, Mary. I think we should wrap it up soon. So if you would put back the slide, your last slide that has your website, and then go to the next one. That's the cooperative. It tells people how they can become master gardeners. Vanessa will help close this out for us.
Got that? Is it up? Yeah.
Can you go back one before that? Your
Before
last
that?
slide with your website.
Sure. This one?
No,
Oh.
no, go the other, that one. And there's one before that with your website.
Oh, not that one. This one.
That one.
There it is.
Okay.
Yep.
And-
So I think we all have lots to do now in terms of searching, buying some seeds so we can start our plant starts. And don't forget, we have an awesome Rhode Island planting calendar. If you're here, you can find your local extension to see when to start those seeds and whether they should go directly in the ground or through seedlings. We can start planning our tour soon. I saw a lot of interest in not only like a fig gardening tour and general Italian garden tour, but also like how to grow things on a budget now that inflation is an issue, and more people want to get that food sovereignty. So really exciting, super inspiring. Mary, thank you so much for being our guest. And I will, if you'd like to hit the next one. And thanks to everyone for going to that website and checking out and supporting Mary's work. Really good stuff. We wanted to just share with you that we have wonderful gardening resources like that planting calendar on our website. We have a phone number and an email, especially during the garden season, where you can send us photos or ask questions to real live master gardeners, technical help in your garden. And then if you want to hit the next one, if anyone's interested in joining our learning and volunteering and giving back community, we encourage you to apply for the Master Gardener course. Usually the application opens up in the summer and is always due on November 1st. So get that in by the Halloween night, and hopefully you'll be learning with us in future years and volunteering with us, especially all you amazing fig growers, Franca. Just kidding. But we'd love to have you. And we love learning in these situations and these types of classes that are not only online, but in the field. And we have amazing projects that are giving back to the community. And thank you to Barbara for all of her organization as well. I think I'll just end the evening by saying, keep warm, everybody. Thanks, spring. It's coming. It's coming. And thank you again, Mary, for sharing that delightful, all this good work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. We look forward to fig growing and fig eating in the summer.